Welcome back to the Noir Archive. Today, we open a secret archive from the Cold War. This is the dark history of Klaus Barbie, known as the Butcher of Lyon, and the secret operation that turned a Nazi war criminal into a protected intelligence asset. How did a man responsible for crimes against humanity vanish into the shadows of South America? The truth lies within the Ratlines. Lyon, France, 1943. As the sunset fades, this beautiful city does not fall asleep, but recoils in terror. At number 12 St. Helene Street, the luxurious hotel terminus has been transformed into a living hell in the heart of the city. People call it the waiting room of death. And standing behind those iron doors is a man with a scholarly face, but hands stained with the blood of thousands of souls. He is Klaus Barbie. The world knows him by a gruesome name, the Butcher of Lyon. Barbie was not just a Gestapo officer simply following orders. He was an artist of pain. With a leather whip in hand and a sneering, arrogant half-smile, he directly participated in the most brutal tortures. The screams of French resistance fighters whose wills were broken, the desperate eyes of 44 Jewish children at the Izia orphanage as they were herded onto trains to Auschwitz, these were all achievements in his dark notebook. For Barbie, brutality was not a means, it was his nature. However, when the guns of World War II fell silent, a horrific paradox occurred. While his peers faced the gallows at Nuremberg, the Butcher of Lyon evaporated like a ghost. He was not captured, nor did he die in some ruined bunker. A cruel twist of history turned the perpetrator into a priceless asset. The disappearance of Klaus Barbie in 1945 was not a solitary escape by a defeated man. It was a meticulously orchestrated plan of personnel transfer within a top-secret U.S. intelligence operation. The man who once tortured Allied agents was now protected by the victors themselves, provided with a false identity and a safe escape route to South America. Why was a demon shielded by angels? At what price was justice bribed? Welcome back to the Noir Archive. Today, we will unfold one of the darkest files of the Cold War era, the story of the criminal shielded by the CIA, Klaus Barbie. To understand why Klaus Barbie became a valuable commodity for U.S. intelligence after the war, we must go back in time to the darkest years of Lyon. But before he was a demon, Barbie was an ambitious man. Born in 1913 in Bad Godesberg, Germany, Klaus Barbie did not come from the military aristocracy. He was the son of a family of teachers, a young man with an intellectual, clean appearance and a face that always exuded calm. In 1935, as the Nazi wind began to blow the flames of extremism across Germany, Barbie joined the SS. He did not choose combat units at the front, but chose the SD, the security service of the SS. There, he learned a skill that would later become the terror of all France, the art of interrogation and hunting down enemies of the Reich. When German troops entered southern France in 1942, Barbie, then only 29 years old, was sent to Lyon to head Department 4 of the Gestapo. His mission was clear: wipe out the resistance movement and deport Jews. Imagine the hotel terminus at that time. A beautiful architectural work in the center of the city, which once welcomed the upper class, had now become an industrial slaughterhouse. Barbie established his headquarters here. The uninvited guests who came to him often never returned. Barbie usually appeared in exquisitely tailored suits or crisp SS uniforms. He loved classical music and enjoyed fine wine, but those same hands holding the wine glass directly performed torture methods that made even the most brutal German soldiers shudder. He didn't just use a leather whip. He used electricity, water, red-hot iron pincers, and he did it slowly, as if enjoying a work of art. There were witnesses who recounted that Barbie could smile politely while breaking a victim's fingers one by one without blinking an eye. To him, human pain was just data to extract information. And his greatest achievement, as well as the most painful scar in French resistance history caused by Barbie, was the Jean Moulin case. In June 1943, based on the betrayal of an internal spy, Barbie organized a raid on the outskirts of Lyon, capturing Jean Moulin, the man most trusted by General Charles de Gaulle, the soul of the French resistance movement. When Moulin was brought back to the Hotel Terminus, Barbie knew he was holding the biggest fish. He directly interrogated Moulin. For many days and nights, the most savage tortures were unleashed. Barbie wanted to know the identities of other resistance leaders. He wanted to break the symbol of Free France. But Jean Moulin chose absolute silence. His body was ravaged to the point of deformity, but his will was not. Finally, Moulin died on the train to Germany due to his severe injuries. Barbie had won militarily, but he had created a martyr for France and, at the same time, etched his name into the first position on the list of most wanted war criminals. But Barbie's cruelty was not only aimed at soldiers with guns. The peak of inhumanity lay in a place that history will never forget, the Izio orphanage. April 6, 1944. A peaceful spring morning in the remote village of Izio. This was the refuge for 44 Jewish children, aged 3 to 17, poor children who had lost their parents in the purges. They thought they were safe in this quiet countryside. But Klaus Barbie never missed an enemy, even if they were children. He was the one who signed the raid order for this orphanage. 2 trucks rushed straight to the house. The children eating breakfast were dragged outside. A witness recounted that as they were being put on the truck, the oldest child tried to sing a song to reassure the younger siblings who were sobbing in fear. Barbie stood there, coldly witnessing the scene. The 44 children and 7 caregivers were sent directly to the Auschwitz concentration camp. Only the oldest survived after the war to tell this story. All 44 children were sent to the gas chambers as soon as they set foot in the camp. In the report sent back to Berlin that night, Barbie wrote nonchalantly, "The Jewish nursery in Izio has been cleared." No incidents occurred. During his 2-year reign in Lyon, Klaus Barbie was said to be directly responsible for the deaths of more than 4,000 people and the deportation of more than 7,000 Jews to concentration camps. He turned Lyon into a cemetery of silence and fear. As the Allies approached Lyon in 1944, Barbie ordered the execution of the last witnesses at the Hotel Terminus before fleeing. He burned the files, wiped away the traces, and vanished into the fog of the fading Nazi war. The world thought this demon would soon be punished. But the truth was quite the opposite. When the gunfire ended, while the bodies of the victims at Izio had not even had time for the grass to turn green, Klaus Barbie had found new bosses, men who were looking for a sharp tool for another war about to begin, the Cold War. How did Klaus Barbie escape? And why was US intelligence willing to join hands with the man who had murdered thousands of innocent people? The answer lies in Operation Ratline, the road to the greatest betrayal of justice in the 20th century. 1945 Europe was nothing but a giant heap of ruins. Between burnt-out tanks and flattened cities, a new world order was taking shape. Nazi Germany had collapsed, but another ghost began to rise from the east, communism. In smoke-filled rooms in Washington and London, strategists realized, the real war is just beginning now. And to win this war, they needed those who understood the enemy better than anyone. They needed Hitler's old hounds. This was when Klaus Barbie reappeared, but not in chains. After fleeing Lyon, Barbie hid under false names in the German countryside. He was not hiding in fear, on the contrary, he was quietly rebuilding his network. In 1947, the U.S. Army Counterintelligence Corps, CIC, the predecessor of the CIA, finally found him. But instead of handcuffing the butcher who had murdered Jean Moulin, CIC agents offered him a cigarette. They realized that Barbie possessed something they craved, a list of communist spies and a deep understanding of Soviet underground operations in the occupied zone. In the eyes of the CIC, Klaus Barbie was no longer a war criminal. He was an asset. A priceless commodity in the new geopolitical game. The moral betrayal began here. U.S. intelligence hired Barbie with a salary higher than that of one of their own mid-level officers. They moved him and his family into a safe house in Augsburg. Here, the man who once ran the slaughterhouse at the Hotel Terminus now sat nonchalantly writing reports for the Americans. But there was a problem: the French. The French government at the time was actively hunting for Barbie. They sent urgent official letters, requesting the extradition of the man who had massacred their civilians. But every time the French got close to the trail, U.S. intelligence intervened. They lied. They reported that no trace of Barbie was found or that he had gone missing. The CIC knew that if Barbie were brought to light in Lyon, an intelligence scandal would break out and they would lose their important source. This patronage lasted for 4 years. But as international pressure mounted, the Americans knew they could not hide Barbie in Europe forever. They needed an exit. And that exit had a symbolic name: the Ratlines. Step into the shadows of the narrow alleys in Rome and Genoa. The Ratlines were a secret escape system established by U.S. intelligence officers, combined with controversial help from some extremist members of the Catholic Church. The goal was to help Nazi officials escape justice to South America, where right-wing dictatorships were ready to welcome them. To move a rat like Barbie across the border, they needed a new identity. In March 1951, in a discreet office, an International Red Cross passport was issued. The photo on it was still the cold face of Klaus Barbie, but the name underneath had changed. He was now Klaus Altmann, a humble mechanic. His wife and children also received corresponding false papers. Everything was meticulously arranged: suitcases full of cash were handed over in the dark, false stamps were placed on travel documents guaranteed by U.S. agents themselves. It was a perfect staging, where justice was suffocated by political compromises. March 23, 1951. Port of Genoa, Italy. Among the crowd of poor migrants seeking opportunities in the New World, the Altmann family quietly boarded the SS Corrientes. Barbie stood on the deck, looking toward the receding European coast. He did not look back with remorse, but with triumph. He had fooled the whole world. He had escaped the death penalty in France thanks to the protection of the very people who had defeated his former masters. The ship cut through the waves toward South America, carrying one of the darkest secrets in U.S. intelligence history. The destination was Bolivia, a landlocked country deep in the continent, where Nazi ghosts could start a new life, and even a brutal new career. During his years wandering at sea, Barbie must have smiled. He understood that in the world of the Cold War, morality was a luxury. Yesterday's murderer could become today's hero, as long as he stood on the right side. But Barbie did not know that no matter how far he went, no matter how many times he changed his name, the restless souls in Lyon and the children in Iseo were still watching him. And somewhere in France, there were people who would spend their whole lives ensuring that his ship would never reach a peaceful harbor forever. However, before justice could act, Klaus Barbie would have a long chapter in South America. There, he would not just be a refugee. He would become a consultant, a drug lord, and a ghost behind the continent's bloodiest coups. South America, the 1950s. Bolivia was a land of contrasts, the majestic beauty of the Andes and the chaos of fragile politics. For a man fleeing a death sentence like Klaus Barbie, this was not a place of exile, but a promised land. He set foot in La Paz under the name Klaus Altmann. The man who was once the terror of France now appeared as a polite, humble German businessman. He quickly built a perfect cover, a transportation expert, a model husband, and a father in the overseas German community. But behind the elegant dinner parties and social handshakes, the Gestapo monster within him never slept. He was waiting for a new opportunity to unleash his brutality. In a country where coups occurred like daily meals, the Bolivian military always craved tactical minds and internal security experts. Barbie, with his black resume full of experience from the SS, soon became a guest of honor for dictatorial generals. He infiltrated the Bolivian military elite not with guns, but with the knowledge of fear. Under dictators like René Barrientos or Hugo Banzer, Klaus Altmann was no longer an ordinary businessman. He became a supreme security advisor. At secret interrogation centers in La Paz, the torture methods Barbie had once perfected at the Hotel Terminus in Lyon were reborn. He taught the Bolivian secret police how to break the will of dissidents, how to use electricity, isolation, and physical pain to extinguish any seeds of resistance. Barbie did not just observe, he directly managed, turning Nazi brutality into a tool of state management in South America. And then, the ghosts of history intersected in a strange way. In 1967, the revolutionary icon Che Guevara appeared in the mountains of Bolivia to launch a guerrilla war. The CIA was hunting him down, and they needed the most well-informed eyes on the ground. Although official records still contain many blank spaces, many theories and witness testimonies indicate that Klaus Barbie played a key role in the elimination of Che. With his experience hunting resistance guerrillas in France, Barbie was believed to have advised the Bolivian military and CIA agents on how to zone, isolate, and break small units in the deep jungle. The man who once murdered Jean Moulin now contributed to taking down another icon of freedom in the 20th century. Barbie was proud of it. He felt he was still an important soldier in the global anti-communist war, a reason he believed would forever keep him safe under Washington's protection. But the peak of the dark power Barbie held lay in another gruesome alliance: drugs. By the end of the 70s, Bolivia became the cocaine production center of the world. Barbie realized that to maintain dictatorial regimes, he needed money, a lot of money. He joined hands with Roberto Suarez Gomez, dubbed the King of Cocaine of Bolivia. Barbie helped Suarez establish a private mercenary army called the Fiancés of Death, Los Novios de la Muerte. This army consisted of far-right extremists and fugitive Nazi veterans, trained to protect drug laboratories and eliminate anyone in their way. In 1980, this alliance led to a shocking event, the cocaine coup. Luis Garcia Meza took power with direct financial support from drug lords and strategic advice from Klaus Barbie. At this point, Barbie was no longer a reclusive ghost, he was an honorary colonel of the Bolivian army, a kingmaker behind the throne, controlling politics, the military, and transcontinental shipments of white powder. During this period, Barbie's confidence turned into extreme arrogance. He began to appear more publicly, giving interviews to foreign newspapers with a smirk on his face. He believed he was untouchable. He had the army protecting him, the CIA covering for him, and a mountain of drug money backing him. When reporters asked about his past in Lyon, Barbie nonchalantly replied, "I did my duty as a soldier. And I am proud of it." He forgot one thing: the world was changing. A wave of democracy began to sweep across South America, and the secret files of his crimes in France were still being tracked by the most resilient eyes. Barbie thought he had beaten time, but justice, though late, was beginning to set its stage. Barbie had no idea that, just as he was enjoying his glory at the peak of power in La Paz, a French couple had found his address. And they would not stop until the perpetrator knelt before the bar of justice. While Klaus Barbie was enjoying the protection of guns in Bolivia, on the other side of the world, a silent hunt began. No army was needed, no secret agents. The weapons of this hunt were old photographs, dusty files, and an unshakable iron will. Leading the hunt were Beat and Serge Klarsfeld. Beat was a German woman who did not accept the silence of her father's generation regarding Nazi crimes. Serge was a French Jewish lawyer whose father had never returned from Auschwitz. They were not agents, they were self-made Nazi hunters. To them, Klaus Barbie was not a name from the past, he was a blood debt that history had to reclaim. In 1971, with incredible persistence, the Klarsfelds found a photo of businessman Klaus Altmann in Bolivia. Serge placed that photo next to the portrait of Klaus Barbie from his SS days. The wrinkles, the eyes, the bone structure, even though 30 years had passed, the demon could not hide himself perfectly. Beat Klarsfeld did something no one dared, she flew straight to La Paz. In the heart of a military dictatorship's power, she publicly protested, unfurling a banner right in front of the guns, "Klaus Altmann is Klaus Barbie, the Butcher of Lyon." This act created a global media shock. For the first time in decades, the name Klaus Barbie was dragged out of the shadows of the CIA and political corridors. International pressure began to weigh on Bolivia. The French were boiling with indignation, demanding a proper explanation. But in Bolivia, the generals still shook their heads. Barbie was too useful to them in crackdowns and drug trafficking. He remained untouchable, until the last shield shattered. In the early 80s, the wind of democracy began to sweep through South America. Military dictatorships fell one after another. In Bolivia, the regime of Luis Garcia Meza, protected by Barbie, was overthrown. A new civilian government took power, and they no longer had any reason to protect a Nazi war criminal. On January 19, 1983, Barbie's luck officially ended. He was arrested in La Paz for debt fraud, a minor reason for the government to hold him. But Barbie understood perfectly what awaited him. In his final moments in Bolivia, he still tried to contact old connections at the CIA, hoping for one last rescue flight. But silence was the only answer. For Washington, Barbie had now become an irredeemable political burden. The night of February 4, 1983. A French military plane landed at a military airport in Lyon. The plane door opened. Klaus Barbie stepped down under strict police protection. He looked around. The atmosphere of Lyon was much colder than La Paz. The cobblestone streets, the ancient buildings, this was the place where he once held the power of life and death 40 years ago. The image of Barbie being escorted, aged and tired, back to the very place where he had once sowed terror, was a powerful symbol of justice. He was taken straight to Montluc prison, the place where he had once imprisoned thousands of his victims. A tragic irony of fate, the torturer finally became a prisoner of the very hell he created. May 1987. The trial of Klaus Barbie officially opened in Lyon. This was not just a legal trial, it was a historical purification ceremony. More than 100 surviving witnesses, now white-haired elders, stood up to face the man who had once broken their bones at the hotel terminus. There were mothers who lost children at Izio, there were resistance soldiers tortured into disability. They told stories of cruelty that normal imagination could not touch. Barbie sat there, in a bulletproof glass cage. He maintained a cold, expressionless face. When asked, he only used the right to remain silent or gave arrogant answers, "I was just a soldier following orders." He did not repent. He did not apologize. He even refused to appear in many hearings, declaring the trial illegal. But his silence could not extinguish the resonance of the truth. The files from France's The Noir Archive exposed everything, every signature on child deportation orders, every torture report. July 4, 1987. After weeks of trial, the judge pronounced the verdict: Klaus Barbie was guilty of crimes against humanity. Sentence: life imprisonment. That was the highest sentence allowed by French law at the time. When the sentence was read, a silence enveloped the courtroom. There were no cheers of victory, only tears streaming down aged faces. Justice had arrived, though it had to travel a long 40-year journey across 2 continents, through intelligence conspiracies and the betrayal of great powers. Klaus Barbie was taken back to his cell. The Butcher of Lyon was finally stripped of all power, all patronage, to face his own darkness within 4 cold stone walls. After the historic 1987 trial, Klaus Barbie was no longer the legendary Butcher of Lyon, nor the powerful Colonel Altmann of Bolivia. He was just an old prisoner, confined in the very city where he had once sowed nightmares. On September 25, 1991, at a prison hospital in Lyon, Klaus Barbie took his last breath at the age of 77 due to cancer. He died without a word of remorse, without a single tear for his victims. His death closed a long chapter of blood and tears, but the questions he left behind continue to haunt the world's conscience. It took many decades after the war ended for the truth about the connection between Barbie and US intelligence to fully emerge from the shadows. In 1983, under intense public pressure, the U.S. Department of Justice had to release an investigation report of more than 200 pages. In it, the U.S. government officially admitted that the CIC had protected Barbie, deceived the French authorities, and helped him escape through Operation Ratline. It was a late admission, accompanied by a bitter apology to France. This truth dealt a heavy blow to the image of Western intelligence agencies. People were shocked to realize that, in the whirlwind of the Cold War, the ideals of freedom and democracy were sometimes set aside to make room for ruthless pragmatic calculations. The story of Klaus Barbie is not just a file on a cruel individual, but an eternal warning about ethics in war and intelligence. It reminds us that when people choose to shake hands with the devil to fight another enemy, the boundaries of justice begin to blur. And when the price of intelligence information is paid with the blood of innocent people, does that victory still have meaning? Klaus Barbie has gone down in history as a scar that will never heal for humanity. But the resilience of the Nazi hunters and the surviving witnesses proved one thing: darkness may last for 40 years, but the light of truth will always find its way back. What do you think about the CIA's trade-off in this case? Does the end ever justify the means? Please leave your thoughts in the comments section below. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications for the Noir Archive to join us as we continue to unfold secret files and the untold corners of history. Thank you for listening. See you in the next file.